It's for all sports podcast.
Welcome to the All Sports Podcast with me, Matt, and today, Joel. How are you, mate?
Hey, Matt. All good, mate.
Right. Straight into F1 in Montreal in Canada. I actually love it. I love the Canadian Grand Prix. The half track, half road circuit that it is.
Something about it reminds me of Melbourne. Is that right or wrong?
That's fair. That's fair. There's a lot of similarities. What I guess when I was biggest into F1 is when Lewis Hamilton was racing for McLaren and he started dominating the Canadian Grand Prix. And the Canadian Grand Prix, I think, is the one that he's actually won the most. And stand to be corrected on that. And now George Russell is starting to really find some form with the Canadian Grand Prix as well. On pole for the last two Canadian Grand Prix and then lost it last year, threw it away last year. He was too tentative driving last year and still got a podium and came around in third. But for him to look very quick, actually both Mercedes sorted out their car. Both Mercedes looked quick in practice, quick in qualifying.
Didn't he?
He did. And then both of them did really well. And yeah, I really enjoyed watching Kimi Antonelli race.
Yeah.
Causing all sorts of problems for Verstappen.
Yeah. He was right up him all for the whole race. Basically, didn't give him a second. Put lots of pressure on from the very start.
Yes,
Verstappen was defending right away, wasn't he? So that set the tone for their race.
And yeah, obviously George Russell, he pretty much led from start to finish, excluding the pits, but a couple of very big talking points. It's the McLaren drivers that have been leading all of the championships so far, and they had it coming together. We'd spoken about it. At some point, they have to clash. Didn't know the clash would be a crash, but certainly thought there's going to be a point in the season where they are racing properly head to head, because it's kind of been when Piastri's been at the front, he's been pulling away, and when he's not been in the mix, it's been Norris at the front and Piastri's been several places down. It's not always been so processional, close that they've been able to attack each other. This was the first race where you also heard it over the radio that Lando Norris was getting the encouragement from his engineer to actually attack Piastri and when and where to do it, and they were building up for it. So they came together at the first opportunity, really, second opportunity that Norris had to have a look at him, and it felt like it was a much bigger picture than what actually happened. What happened was a microcosm for what's actually happening in the driver's standings, because it felt like he took the first opportunity he possibly could to try and get past him, but that wasn't necessarily going to be his best opportunity.
No.
He went for it at a corner where there wasn't space. Piastri had stayed on his racing line, so Norris would have had to go inside. He instead thought that Piastri was going to go inside and seal off the corner, but he didn't. He hung it out wide, and Norris just waited for the gap and went into the back of him looking for space on the outside. And it felt like a very rushed mistake. That he wanted to get it done. Like, he didn't know if he was going to get an opportunity, so he had to get it done then and there, and it wasn't measured. And this is the kind of mistake that James and I regularly talk about with Norris, is that there is a level of immaturity there and a mistake that's in him in these F1s, and it cost him dearly. Out of the race, no points. So he lost. So Piastri came round in fourth, and so he's lost 12 points. So it's not like Piastri won and he lost 20. But what they were racing for was the difference of 2 points.
Yeah, Norris is very fortunate that he didn't cost the team all their points for the day.
Yes.
So I think he can count his lucky stars with that. I mean, everything you've said is true. So to kind of talk through the incident, they're approaching the final corner, right, which is where Norris makes a good move, where there's space to be had, and it's a good manoeuvre. He almost gets in front. Piastri readjusts and shows incredible speed of thought and like car control to get back in front, to like maintain his position and then get back in front down the straights.
The switchback, it's a common thing in overtaking. If someone cuts inside and takes the inside line, they're obviously compromising their speed on the next corner if it switches back the other way.
Yeah.
So Piastri, I felt like, actually almost let him have it to do the switchback on the next corner.
Yeah. And that's like a big, and I feel like you say, it's a microcosm of the championship between the two, but it's also like the microcosm of their driving styles as well. Like Piastri was able to think a step ahead and able to think, okay, this is fine. He can go past me because I'm going to have a better position going into the next corner, and that's all that matters, really. Yeah. So he knew he'd have the DRS as well because he had it from the car. I can't remember who was it, Leclerc in front at that point.
Kimi Antonelli.
Yeah. So he knew that he had that, and he knew he'd be in a great position on the first corner, and that Norris would basically have to pull back, which Norris did not do. Continued to try and attack, even though he'd almost taken his opportunity. And it's like, okay, fair enough. Piastri's put himself back in the best possible position that he can. You've got to just back off at that point and say, fair play, I tried it, didn't quite happen. I'm going to wait for my next opportunity, not keep trying to force it. And hopefully he learns from it. But I mean, we've said it a lot with him, haven't we? Like there's been tons of these types of examples of him either throwing races away, throwing qualifying away, in really like intense moments where he seems to lose concentration, lose patience, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, it's poor judgment, isn't it?
Yeah. So, like I say, he's incredibly fortunate that it didn't cost all the team all of their points. He was pretty cut up about it, wasn't he? After immediately on the radio, you could tell that he was, oh God, what have I done? And then after the race, he was obviously full of regret in the interviews.
It was, and I think it was the McLaren, we talk about it a lot, pride themselves on team first, and he spoke to that too, and he knows it, and he knows if he's to be the number one driver or whatever it is, that he needs to promote that team ethos publicly as well. But I think it came across as authentic, and I think it probably was. He knows that there was no way that it was anyone else's mistake but his. It certainly wasn't Piastri's. Probably a little bit with his engineer for pushing him so hard. I've never had an engineer versus your own teammate. He didn't say, remember, bring both cars home, which you regularly hear on team radio. It was just talking about attack.
Yeah,
the whole time.
But they were on
Maybe that was just what got put out over the broadcasts.
Maybe they were on at him even before all of that, because he was a bit slow, wasn't he? To start with, and they were setting him targets, which he was hitting. He was having He was putting
they
good.
Were coaching him. He's done 138 races.
Yeah.
And they're coaching him around because, like you said earlier, I think he loses his concentration. It's all well and good being at the front of the pack and coasting a little bit or protecting your tyres and taking your foot off the gas a little bit. And if someone starts to close it, then you can turn it back on again and focus. But when you're doing the chasing, you can't let up. You've got to always, time is of the essence, and you have to continually be chipping away.
Yeah.
And he needed to be coached to do that. They were having to tell him where he was losing time and like you said, to keep on giving him those targets to go after, those lap times to go after. Like he wasn't just performing on his own back.
Yeah, it strikes you that he kind of needs that. He needs that kind of short-term target. Like, what's the next thing that I need to hit? Let me focus on that. And, when you're driving at that speed, you need to be thinking about the next thing. You're not thinking about the corner you're in, you think about the next corner. It's exactly the same as the situation that they were in between Piastri and Norris, where Piastri's thinking about the next corner, but Norris is just thinking about that one and just thinking about that point in time there. And it's a similar thing with having to be coached around the lap times and like, okay, no, you need to be hitting these numbers now. This is going to be important for your race later on.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, I do like him. Like I said, like you said about his authenticity, I think he does have that, but he's in a really good car, and at the moment, Piastri is looking like a much more considered driver and basically a much more likely champion.
Much more mature. You would think it would be him that had done the 138 Grand Prix. Yeah, it's the gap is obviously not unassailable. It will always be mathematically achievable. It's just how close the gap is actually to Max and George is surprising from Lando. It's 176 to 55. So it's only 21 points that he's ahead of Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
And no other cars have been anywhere near. I mean, Lando Norris, 8 podiums, 2 wins. Max Verstappen, 5 podiums, 2 wins. Verstappen is obviously the best racer. He's the fastest driver. Whatever they're doing with that car, I don't know. That it's just built specifically for him. But apparently they've turned the corner with that this weekend and started to develop it a little bit more for Yuki.
Right.
That certainly didn't play out in the race, but that is what I was hearing. But yeah, just to finish off on the McLaren's, it feels like as the season goes on, what we were seeing earlier on in the season, the little bits of mistakes for Norris, perfect Piastri, it's just continuing to play out. And as it does more and more, the gap and the gulf is expanding, and each of those two personas is getting more and more exaggerated the longer it goes on and the more they both keep leaning into it. Like Piastri, so calm, cool, collected, and measured. Norris fast as anything, but lacking focus, and he's got a mistake in him.
Yeah, for sure.
Great segue to driver of the day.
Okay.
Who was driver of the day?
I don't know. Who was
Stroll?
Really?
Yeah, home Grand Prix. That can be all it was, because gosh, that guy started 17th, finished 17th, but got driver of the day. Lapped in his Aston Martin. Where was the other Aston Martin? Where was the other Aston Martin? 7th. 6 points. Thank goodness they've got Fernando Alonso to pick up points.
He had, I thought he had a decent day, didn't he, Alonso? Not quite driver of the day material, but you know.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. The funny thing about it, yeah. Although Alonso actually started in 6th and finished 7th, so in that regard, in relative terms, Stroll actually did better.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, talk about the finish. Like, nobody likes to see a race finish under a
safety car.
Safety car in the way that it did, but
except for George Russell,
we still got to, he would have very much enjoyed that. But we still got some entertainment from Russell and Verstappen. Approaching the line.
I think Russell would have been so nervous that they were going to say, "Yeah, do 1 lap, like safety car in." And you're going to do 1 lap. That would his biggest fear.
Hamilton, Verstappen, 2022, 23, was that?
Yeah, it still feels far too recent.
Yeah. But yeah, the little break from Russell, and then Verstappen overtakes him, and they're both straight on the radio. Like, Russell, Max just overtook me under the safety car. And then they're like, yeah, we'll have a look. And then Verstappen's like, George Russell just broke aggressive braking.
Yeah, and he's saying, erratic driving under safety car. Red Bull then raise a complaint. Interestingly, though, if Max had have stayed ahead and he hadn't given the place back, technically, obviously that's not how it transpired, but he'd have got his ban. That would have been the point that he needed to get a ban.
Right. Is he working under like a suspended?
Yeah, he's got 1 point left on his licence.
I see. I see.
So George could have really played the game and just parked. He could have just parked the car, and all of the other cars concertina behind him, and Max gets a ban.
Yeah, very funny.
Gives everyone a better chance in the next race if he's not racing.
What is the next race? What's next?
Next race, we've got one. Well, we've got the start of the triple header in Europe again. So we've got the Austrian Grand Prix that starts at the end of the month. So that's from the 27th of June. Before we go to Silverstone on the 4th of July. It always is traditionally the first weekend of July, and then Spa in Belgium, an amazing circuit before the summer break. And that's 25th of July. So we've got 3 in Europe before the summer break. And then we have 3 in Europe again when we come back at the end of the summer break.
Interesting to see where we are come that summer break now. I feel like Verstappen it's not going away, is it? And if they think they figured something out with the car this weekend, he can have 3 good weekends before the break. He could be banging it.
Yeah, the Red Bull Ring in Austria. Yeah, I don't know who it favours, but I don't really like it as a track. For nostalgic reasons, I like the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, but I'm not overly keen on the Austrian one. That just about wraps us for today. If you've enjoyed listening along, you can like and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube. You can get in touch on email at
allsportspods@gmail.com.
Excellent.
Thanks.
And we will see you on the next one. Cheers.